It's become a commonplace to argue that prosecutorial decisions are legitimate only when they are made by the lowest level line prosecutors, the career prosecutors handling any given case. Ironically, some of those same critics see no problem in campaigning for highly political elected district attorneys to remake state and local prosecutorial offices in their preferred progressive image, which often involves overriding the considered judgment of the career prosecutors and police officers. But aside from that hypocrisy, the notion that line prosecutors should make the final decisions within the Department of Justice is completely wrong, and it is antithetical to the basic values that undergirds our entire system. The Justice Department is not a Praetorian Guard that watches over a society impervious to the ebbs and flows of politics. It is an agency within the executive branch of a democratic republic, a form of government where the power of the state is ultimately reposed in the people, acting through their elected president and their elected representatives. The men and women who have ultimate authority in the Justice Department are thus the ones on whom our elected officials have conferred that responsibility by presidential appointment and Senate confirmation. That blessing by the two political branches of government gives these officials democratic legitimacy that career officials do not possess. The same process that produces these officials also holds them accountable. The elected president can fire senior Department of Justice officials at will, and the elected Congress can summon them to explain their decisions to the people's representatives and to the public. And because these officials have the imprimatur of both the president and Congress, they also have the stature to resist these political pressures when necessary, and they can take the heat for what the Department of Justice does or doesn't do. Line prosecutors, by contrast, are generally part of the permanent bureaucracy. They do not have the political legitimacy to be the public face for tough decisions, and they lack the political buy-in necessary to publicly defend those decisions. Nor can the public and its representatives hold civil servants accountable in the same way as appointed officials. Indeed, the public's only tool to hold the government accountable is an election. And the bureaucracy is neither elected nor easily replaced by those who are. Moreover, because these officials are installed by the democratic process, that is, the appointees, they are the most equipped to make the judgment calls concerning how we should wield our prosecutorial power. The statute I referenced was 28 U.S.C. Section 509, which couldn't be plainer. All functions of other offices of the Department of Justice and all functions of agencies and employees of the Department of Justice are vested in the Attorney General. And because the Attorney General is ultimately politically accountable for every decision that the department makes, I and my predecessors have had an obligation to ensure that we make the correct decision. The Attorney General, the Assistant Attorneys General, the U.S. Attorneys are not figureheads. We're supervisors. Our job is to supervise, and anything less is an abdication. I was being interviewed by a member of the press. It was a radio interview, and I got one of these questions like, well, why are you interfering in some case over here or some case over there? And I said, well, why do you think we have one Attorney General? I said, we have 93 districts, 50 states, 93 districts. Why don't you think each U.S. attorney should be a law unto themselves? Why do you think we have one Attorney General? For uniformity of law, for having consistency in the application of law, for having someone who has the entire perspective of the playing field. And the cameramen were all nodding their head. This made sense. This made sense. In short, the Attorney General, senior DOJ officials, and U.S. attorneys are indeed political, but they are political in a good and necessary sense. Indeed, aside from the importance of not fully decoupling law enforcement from the constraining and moderating forces of politics, devolving all authority down to the most junior officials does not even make sense as a matter of basic management. Name one successful organization or institution where the lowest level employees' decisions are deemed sacrosanct. They aren't. There aren't any. Letting the most junior members set the agenda might be a good philosophy for a Montessori preschool, but it is no way to run a federal agency. Good leaders at the Department of Justice, as any organizations, need to trust and support their subordinates, but that does not mean blindly deferring to whatever those subordinates want to do. One of the more annoying things that I hear and face, and this has been going on for decades, this strange idea that political officials interfere in investigations or in cases. And I'm saying, what do you mean by interfere? Under the law, all prosecutorial power is vested in the Attorney General. And these people are agents of the Attorney General. And as I say to FBI agents, whose agent do you think you are? Now, I don't say this in a pompous way, but that is the chain of authority and legitimacy in the Department of Justice. And I say, well, what exactly am I interfering with? And when you boil it right down, it's the will of the most junior member of the organization who has some idea that he wants to do something. And what makes that sacrosanct? What makes the judgment of the next layer up or the next layer up or the next layer up? Each layer, by the way, fanning out and having broader and broader experience, much more experience, and a broader portfolio and a broader perspective. What makes the line attorney who's handling a particular case, their judgment so sacrosanct? Now, the idea is, I guess, well, they're not political, and therefore their judgments won't be political. But for my experience in the department, in two different eras, career employees are not apolitical necessarily. Some are. Some are very political and can check their politics at the door, and others can't. In case after case, we've advanced and defended hyper-aggressive extensions of the criminal law. This is wrong, and we have to stop doing it. Now, I couldn't believe it. I'd get in and I'd see some statute, and people would say, well, how are we going to interpret this, interpret the statute? This court over here said this should be limited to such and such. Are we going to acquiesce in that and adopt that as our interpretation? And normally the answer you would get in the Department of Justice is, well, that sort of ties us down. Of course, that's the whole point of the law. That sort of ties us down. We want our prosecutors to have the broadest possible discretion. So we can't buy into that. Let's leave it loosey-goosey. And I said, well, no, we have to say what the law is. And that decision was a good interpretation of the law, and it should be adopted. The fact that it hems us in and we can't just use this law, as a utility knife is a good thing. And that's what we frequently say. I'd like to be able to stand here and say we don't see headhunting in the Department of Justice, and that would not be truthful. I see it every day. And it's a temptation that the power of prosecution is a heady power. And it is a temptation sometimes to go after people rather than crimes. And we see that every night. This country is in serious problems. With all the problems, real problems we face in international affairs and domestically, when most of our news coverage, or what passes for news coverage, are bloviating talking heads discussing whether some action in Washington, some action taken by an official, constitutes some esoteric crime. And, looking through statute books to see, could we, say that this is a crime? Because disagreement no longer is enough. Political disagreement and political debate. Now you have to call your adversary a criminal, and instead of beating them politically, you try to put them in jail. So we're becoming sort of like an Eastern European country, where if you're not in power, you're in jail or you're a member of the press. Think about the power of a prosecutor. Doesn't have to answer to anything outside the office of the prosecutor. And he can destroy people's lives just by bringing an investigation, destroy their reputation, destroy their livelihood in today's world. And it's not just individuals. Think of the corporations. Anderson, the accounting firm, thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs done away with in an instant because of a prosecutorial decision. And a decision that was largely discretionary, because individuals are initially responsible for the crime. And the question of whether or not you're going to impute that to the corporation and take down the corporation as well is largely a discretionary call by prosecutors. And in today's world, going after a corporation or a white-collar defendant is like shooting fish in a barrel. There is no contest. You threaten a company with criminal liability and all the collateral effects that has. No corporation is going to go to trial and fight that, and the prosecutors know that. It's just a question of how much the check is going to be. And that's all within the control of a prosecutor. There are many other examples. In fact, it's interesting when people say that the Trump administration is lawless, and I usually say, scratching my head saying, we litigate all our stuff, we win a lot of it, we go through the process, what exactly is lawless about it? The fact is that the Obama administration had the worst record in the Supreme Court of any recent administration, losing cases. And our administration so far has been doing above average in terms of winning in the Supreme Court. So, I wouldn't say we were lawless. But again, the Obama administration, had some of the people who were in Mueller's office writing their briefs in the Supreme Court. So maybe that explains something. Yeah, very aggressive positions, very, sort of aggressive, and we're gonna prosecute these people and so forth. And then, they're not crowing so much after they get whooped in the Supreme Court.